I uploaded an immigration clip about a week ago now, right? And it was from our first episode where we went over these fake immigration statistics that are being thrown around by nigelfarage, by Robert Jenrick, all of these different types of individuals, right? And I went over those statistics and I looked at where they came from, whether they are reliable, whether they are credible, whether they are valid. And it turns out that they are not, right? It turns out that these statistics that are being thrown around are using fake and fabricated population numbers, right? So one of the statistics was that an Afghan and an Eritrean male is 22 times more likely to be committed of rape than their white counterparts, right? Okay, that sounds terrible. So then we looked at it, we found out that they used the wrong population size for Afghans. Instead of using a 48,000 population number in London, they used a 12,000 population number, right? So they've basically deduced the population sample so that the times more likely figure looks bigger than it actually is. That's all the video was about, right? Frankly, it wasn't about, arguing with these far right types. It wasn't about, because and this is the thing, right? I probably wouldn't make a video on that because I'm not here to sort of stir the pot and create more division than is needed, because frankly, right now, we're looking at a country that is very divided and is not enough united, especially for a country that starts with the word united, right? And I made these points in the video. And what it seems like is that the reasonable takes and the reasonable things that I said were, just ignored, frankly, just sort of went over their head. And all they listened to was the statistics part, right? And they're saying that, some of them were a bit more reasonable, right? So you had some guys saying, well, it's 22 times more likely, right? Is what they were saying, and it becomes 3 times more likely. Well, that's still 3 times more likely. Well, I said that in the video. I'm sorry to say, but I said in the video, that's 3 times more likely, granted. We can have a conversation, right? And we'll have the conversation now, right? If we're looking at Afghan males being 3 times more likely to be committed of rape, okay, that's terrible. That's despicable, and that's condemnable. And I must condemn that, because at the end of the day, if anyone rapes an individual, right? If anyone, they will be condemned, and I believe they should face the harshest punishment possible, even harsher than what this country would inflict on criminals and offenders. And this is one of the points I made in the comments section, right? I said that, well, what are we going to do with these individuals, right? Because if I was in charge, I'd probably implement what the Gulf's doing at the moment. And I can guarantee you, right? I don't bet, because obviously I am a Muslim, but if I were to bet, I would bet my whole life on the fact that if you introduce harsh punishment, perhaps the death penalty, then these crimes would stop, or at least they would be severely, go down, right? Severely. And this is the point I was making, right? And a lot of those comments, reasonable, right? I can have a conversation with you and we can sort of go back and forth about what do we want to do, right? But frankly, I'm not here to, go over it. I can have these conversations. I'm not here to try and minimize 3 times more likely, whether 22 times more likely. What I will say is that going from 22 times to 3 times is a massive lie, right? It's a massive fabrication. So that was the point of the video there. There were also some comments that were not as reasonable, right? You had individuals who were really just espousing ridiculous sentiment, right? Some of them were basically, frankly, saying that, well, whether it's 22 times more likely or 3 times more likely, if the immigrant wasn't here, it wouldn't happen, right? What is this argument like? This is the type of argument that a 5-year-old would make. This is the type of argument a 5-year-old would make. That's like saying, I'm in a car right now, right? Let's say that if we got rid of all cars in the UK, right, then car-related deaths and injuries would stop. So that therefore we shouldn't drive cars, right? No, of course not, right? Because if you bring immigrants into the country, the pros outweigh the cons, right? Because the cons are like this small, if we're talking about it in this this type of argument, the cons are this small and the pros are this big. What are the pros, right? If we're looking at Muslims contribute $60 billion to the UK economy. 60 billion, right? That is basically Manchester and Birmingham combined. So Manchester and Birmingham combined is how much Muslims contribute to the economy every year, I believe it is. 60 billion, right? 60 billion. Muslims are 4 times more likely, right, to give to charity than their non-Muslim counterparts. 4 times more likely, right? Also, the NHS, and everyone makes this argument, but if you actually look at the numbers, you crunch the numbers down, right? 6% of the UK's population are Muslim. They make up 22% of NHS medical professionals, right? What is that, like it's near a 4 times overrepresentation? And this isn't you can't make this argument about DEI, this is diversity, this is equity and inclusion. You can't make this argument because it takes a lot of hard work to get yourself into the NHS, to become a doctor, to become a GP, to become a nurse, to become any of these, to become a dentist, to become any of these professionals, right? So they're contributing so much. And in fact, 51% of NHS professionals are either immigrants or the sons of immigrants. Now, I'm not here making an argument for immigration. I'm here making an argument for Muslims. Muslims contribute so much to this country. And frankly, you take Muslims out of this country, the whole country collapses, okay? You take immigrants out of this country, the whole country collapses, frankly, okay? The economy is severely dented, severely, to such a point that we haven't saw since 2008, since the market crash, okay? So what are we talking about here, right? What are we talking about here? With your saying that, if it wasn't here, this wouldn't happen. Okay, if we weren't here, you wouldn't have a doctor, mate. Half of your doctors would be gone. So what is this? Another guy, he says that, he quotes me, native Muslims, and then a laughing emoji, or whatever emoji he uses. And yeah, native Muslims. That's what I said in the video. Yeah. There are Muslims in this country who have citizenship here, who hold valid passports, like me, like other individuals, okay? They are citizens of this country. Just as much a citizen as you are, as any of you are, right? As all of us are. How many Muslims? Millions. 3, 4, 5 million. How many passports is that? You're going to get rid of every single passport. Is that what you think you're going to do? Because if you think you're going to do that, right, you've got another thing coming. It's not going to happen. Nobody in their right mind could implement that. Okay? Nobody's going to implement that. Because I've just said the cascading effect it would have on the country, economically, socially, in all other aspects. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any feasible, viable sense, frankly. Okay? There were other comments, but a lot of them were unreasonable. And I think what we saw is that the UK has very much moved to the right, and that's fine. Because a lot of the times, if you look at it, you look at the country in the United States and the West as a whole, 5 years ago, even before, a year after Trump came in the second time, the Liberals controlled the arguments and they controlled the narrative. And now it's the opposite, right? When the Liberals controlled the narrative, we were getting pushed absolute, ridiculous stuff was getting pushed, frankly. Very ridiculous, okay? And now when the right controlled the narrative, it's just as ridiculous, right? I don't want to say it's worse because some of the things the Liberals were saying, man, it was just crazy, frankly. But we can have a conversation about socioeconomics. It always goes down to socioeconomics. Some people were trying to say it was culture. Some people were trying to say it was, I think some people were trying to say it's eugenics, this biological argument, which I'm sorry to say, I mean, it's 2025, and I'm not trying to sound like a liberal, but eugenics in 2025, biology in 2025, it's socioeconomics, right? Some people are trying to say culture. It can be culture, but socioeconomics dictate culture. You have a black guy who is high net worth. You have a white guy who is high net worth. You have a Chinese guy who is high net worth. You have a Pakistani guy who is high net worth. They're both going to commit crimes on the same level. And the same thing goes for the low income and low net worth individual, right? Socio-economics, basic socio-economics. But I could go on about this all day. We have got other